Welcome back to The Price of Business. This is William Edmundson filling in for Kevin today. We're here to talk about you and your business. I've got an old friend of mine, not that he's old, but he's an old friend of mine, an expert in the workplace situation, and his name is Frank Cottle. Frank, head of Alliance Business Centers, welcome to the show.
Thank you, William. Very happy to be here.
We're glad to have you here. Hey, give us your elevator speech about Alliance Business Centers real quickly, and then I've got all kinds of things I want to talk about.
Well, Alliance Business Centers is a network of 700 serviced office locations operating across 47 countries globally, about 22 million square feet and about 400,000 customers. So we've been in the industry for 35 years and take great pride in the services that we are able to provide.
And for those of you outside of the industry, Frank is one of the early guys in the industry and a mentor to so many people who've been in the industry. And many of you know that I was president and CEO of Abbey Executive Suites, which was based here in Houston until we sold to our global competitor, the Regis Group. Well, Frank, the workplace is really something that is changing a lot. We take a look at how people are untethered from the technology that used to require them to be plugged into a wall. We take a look at how companies aren't necessarily requiring people to be in a set office. We see changes in furniture. We see changes in environments. Tell us about the evolution of the workplace, if you would.
Oh, gosh. That's a long story, longer than we have here. But I'll just mention some current data.
Perfect.
According to IDC, a research group based in Boston, there'll be approximately 1.6 billion mobile workers in the workforce by the end of 2017. That's right around the corner.
Yeah, it is.
And they're defining a mobile worker as any permanently employed individual who works outside of the office 2 or more days per week.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't sound like a lot, just 2 days a week. But if you take 1.6 billion workers and you start putting them in Starbucks and serviced offices and co-working centers and different lounge scenarios or working from their homes, the trend shifting in everything we look at and do is just amazing, just amazing.
Well, when we take a look at the industry, I mean, there's so many different names, but really it's all serviced office space. Tell us and all of our listeners about some of the different names that might fall into that category.
Well, serviced offices, definitionally, are all providers that combine people, place, and technology and deliver those services through a highly flexible service agreement rather than trying to do conventional leasing.
Mm-hmm.
And the benefit to the client, obviously, is the aggregation of all three of those things and the flexibility that's involved. They can have an office for the day, the week, the month, the hour, a year, multiple years, multiple offices. It's just a highly flexible work structure that's been created over the last 30 years by our industry.
Right.
So all people that combine people, place, and technology, or all providers that combine people, place, and technology are what constitutes our industry. And common names that people hear are executive suites, business centers, co-working centers, incubators, accelerators, logistics centers, etc. The only difference between those, and you might liken it to the automotive industry somewhat, the only difference between those is the brand promise, if you will, of each sector. So a classic business center might be people, place, and technology combined with very professional imaging services. You mentioned Regis or Alliance would fall into that category predominantly. A co-working center would take those same people, place, and technology, maybe make the ratio a little bit different, but the same three elements, and the brand promise to their client would be business growth through a collaborative community. and the stress being on it's not where you work, it's who you work with or around that creates the community. And that's part of the value proposition of coworking. An incubator would be a business center, a coworking center that had mentoring. An accelerator would just add capital access to an incubator, et cetera. So all of those things take the three core components of people, place, and technology, combined with a highly flexible service agreement, deliver that to the customer, and that's what's enabling the mobility in our workforce today.
Yeah, it's interesting that the technology has really enabled workers to treat the way that they do business very differently. And I say workers, I mean employees, employers, solopreneurs, people in startups, whatever it may be. You're not required to sit with a cable running into a wall. Tell us how that's changed with the design of where people can work, Frank.
Well, I think that we all have the ability today to work from anywhere, whether it's via a laptop, a tablet, even our smartphones. We're never unconnected. That's kind of a good news, bad news story for a lot of us as well. You know, I feel like that I never stop working these days. But that connectivity and the bandwidth that supports it really is the fabric which is causing almost all work to be done today. There's no company that I know of that is unconnected. And what's beautiful about that is it allows people to work where they want to. And we're not just talking offices or a style of office, but we're saying where they want to geographically.
Right.
I'll use our own company as an example. All of our C-level officers within the company are in different locations. Our head of marketing loves horses, loves the Midwest. He's in Kentucky. He's in Lexington, Kentucky. Our chief operating officer likes running a big team very effectively. He's in Monterrey, Mexico. Our chief financial officer has raised and have his family and is very attached to the city of Las Vegas. And I'm out here in Newport Beach, California. So we're a totally virtual company where each officer, each person in the company is able to live where their family is. They don't have to uproot to take a new job. They can enjoy the things they have always enjoyed in their private life and still be fully connected and work as a team on a daily and hourly basis. And that's what technology has given us today.
Yeah.
Decentralization is good, and the technology allows us to re-centralize, if you will, for all of our activities.
Yeah, it's really interesting how companies can do that. And you want to go to to somebody's office of a company, you're better off going onto some kind of sharing program, because it's not just going to be one central office anymore. That's kind of the way things used to be. I like how you guys are set up.
There's some disruption in all of that too, though. When we look at large companies, and I'll use Cisco as an example. Cisco is a great company, has great products, and a tremendously large workforce on a global basis. And when you look at large companies that have figured out the decentralized, re-centralized model based on the technology, it allows them to have their employees work closer to their customers than necessarily closer to the home office or the branch office. And that allows for a higher level of service on the one hand. On the other hand, though, technology has brought about a new employment model, contracting rather than employment.
Right.
So a lot of large companies are taking their workforce, let's say they have 100,000 employees worldwide, they might have cut that workforce by 15 or 20% as employees and rehired those same people as contractors.
Right.
The outshot of that is those contractors then are free to work where they want and how they want. And as a result, it's still supported by the parent company generally. As a result, they aren't in a single office facility, which is quite disruptive to the commercial office industry right now.
Absolutely.
They're trying to figure out, large companies are growing. They have more staff, but less people and less square footage that they're taking. And so the commercial office industry is very much looking to us, who are capturing those contractors, to refill that space. And there's a lot of both disruption and opportunity being created as a result.
Yeah, very good. And with the disruption, there are changes. And like you say, when a company like Cisco takes a chunk of their employees and makes them contractors and allow them to work from anywhere, that does a number of things. One, it reduces the footprint of space Cisco needs. Two, it is an opportunity for any kind of serviced office type environment to either have memberships or have have the ability to open their services up for these contractors, and it also can take advantage of the multi locations, not only within cities but globally, where these people can work.
Right. And what you're seeing today is that just like large companies would have a network of their own branch offices, you're seeing today that contractors using network officing structures like our own at Alliance also have a network. So they can move from facility to facility for meetings, conferencing, just finding workstations with tremendous amount of ease on a contracted or just on a touchdown basis.
Right.
And as much as I like Starbucks coffee, it's a lousy place to end up trying to pretend you can work.
Absolutely. And we've all done it.
Facilities such as our own are fulfilling that need very nicely, and our industry is growing quite rapidly right now, at about 15% a year for the last few years, which is about the same pace as the technology or the computer industry was growing even during the height of the dot-com industry, or the dot-com boom.
That's incredible.
So we have just a tremendous amount of adjustment going on, you could say, globally.
Now tell us, Frank, we hear a lot of buzz about WeWork and their valuation, and all of a sudden I'm seeing a lot of people wanting to get into the co-working type business, jump into serviced offices in one form or another. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, WeWork and Regus, and I have to put them both in the same category.
Sure.
They're both two very large companies within our industry. You could think of them in the hotel industry as being somewhat like Hilton and Marriott.
Right.
WeWork is the newer company and hasn't truly proven its business model yet in the markets. Regus has been around for decades and is very well proven. They really provide the same value proposition to the customer of flexibility, combining that people, place, and technology. WeWork takes more of a co-working approach, and Regus takes more of a classic business center approach.
Right.
They both have their requirement, their need. And again, I'll liken it to the automotive industry. There's just as many people like luxury cars as like SUVs, as like family vans.
Sure.
And some people have one of each. Myself, as an example, I office in a very, very nice high-end business center, but I also use a couple of kind of cutting-edge co-working environments when I'm on the road, because I just like dropping in, using the place, and moving back out. I like the vibe.
Sure.
So it's almost a flavor of the day approach that you can take, and it's quite fun.
Do me a favor and tell us, some of the listeners may not be familiar with some of the terms. Can you tell us a little bit about, you talk about the vibe of co-working. Tell us a little bit about what a co-working place would be like versus an executive suite.
A classic executive suite or business center is going to be a full floor in a building, generally a central business district, a mid or high-rise building, a Class A environment. Private offices for each individual company or team offices for each individual company. And while they have lounges and conference rooms and meeting areas, the emphasis is on privacy and productivity and quality, image, things of that nature. Generally highly supported clerical, secretarial, administrative services, and a strong tech environment. A co-working environment generally has all the same attributes, but just displays them differently. And you can think of the restaurants as an example. You might have an almost identical menu in two restaurants, but one's a little bit fancy and the other's down on the beach.
Right.
So a co-working center is really all about who you're working with, not just where you're working.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a more open, a little more engaging environment whose community is very interactively involved in sometimes helping and aiding one another, as well as just participating in the general growth of business. And it's really a millennial model versus almost a baby boomer model of the same product.
And what's interesting is when you go in a co-working space, you're always going to find some of the big community tables. You may find much more open spaces. You'll still have some offices in there, but there is kind of that spirit of openness and helping each other. And even I learned there's a code for I want to be left alone, or I'm working on a project or something, and that is that's you know what it is too, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do, and it really has to do with headsets. It's
That's it.
cute,
That's
really.
it. It's like a do not disturb sign.
And when you're working in a communal environment, privacy becomes a major issue.
Yeah.
And so the controlling method really becomes a headset. And so if you don't have a headset on, then people will feel very free to engage you. If you have a headset on, but maybe just one ear, then people know they can ask something or engage you briefly, but not to make it too long, but you're really working there.
Right.
If you've got your headsets on completely and you're focused into your work, then heaven forbid anybody should disturb you. And the repercussion of that becomes less than community-oriented, you might say sometimes.
I can imagine.
But it's really a kind of a good little rule that has just evolved naturally.
Interesting. And I've also noticed a number of hybrid locations coming up. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And is that they don't know what they want to be, or they're evolving? Or tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that, Frank.
Well, I think it's like all hybrids. It's really a bit of a homogenization. I don't think it's an identity issue at all. I think they know exactly what they want to be. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned WeWork earlier. WeWork really is a hybrid.
Right.
If you look at their centers, you'll see a lot of high-quality community areas, but you'll also see that 90% of the remaining space are private offices. Now, they're glass-walled, so you don't feel as contained within the offices or as excluded from others. That's going to be a good news, bad news relative to privacy issues.
Right.
But the ratios of a WeWork are really very much like the ratios build-out-wise of a Regis or a classic business center. Mm-hmm. And yet they're using community as a marketing medium and also providing a community-based product. So I would put them into we know who we are, but we are a hybrid type category. You might just think it's trying to take the best of both worlds and combine them. And a great example of that in the automotive industry would be a classic GT or Gran Turismo car. Big, heavy, luxurious, smooth, quiet, very powerful in sport driving.
Right.
So they've taken two characteristics that people want and blended them together. And we see that that's really a homogenization of co-working and classic business centers that probably will end up being the predominant product developed during the next 10 years.
Fantastic. Well, Frank, we've got less than a minute to go. Tell us how people can find you and your website and hear more about the things we've been talking about today.
Well, that's easy. I'm always happy to plug that. Our two primary websites, three actually, are abcn.com for Alliance Business Centers Network, and alliancevirtualoffices.com. And then a fun little website that's really the news and information resource for the entire serviced office industry is officingtoday.com. It's just a publication, the digital publication that we sponsor, as really just a sponsored activity within the industry to try and educate and inform not just our own industry, but those people that are interested in learning more about it.
Great. Well, thank you, Frank. I appreciate having you on. Frank Cottle with Alliance Business Centers. Thanks for being on the show. We'll be back with more of The Price of Business right after this.